Oh, wait.
Welcome to this.
Oh no!
I'm
you.
no, I'm you.
You're me. Oh no!
Please hold. Technical difficulties.
The technical difficulties are my
In
brain.
Jack's brain.
Yes. You can have my firstborn child. That's fine. Oh boy.
It me.
Okay.
It not me.
Why? I didn't press save.
You didn't press save. Oh, it's me again. Yay.
There we go.
Okay, luckily no one was here to see that.
It's fine.
Okay.
Ta-da! I was here to see that. Oh no.
Rip.
I'm bright. Why am I so bright? Oh,
Rip Jack's entire life.
Because of this. This is why I'm so bright. I'm a ghost. Oh.
Yeah, you are a ghost.
Okay.
We're doing this today instead of Zelda because Jack decided that they don't like Zelda anymore.
No, I can't focus on it right now.
That's fair.
And then I decided to buy Castle Crashers this morning.
The DLC, not like the whole thing.
No, I bought the whole thing.
Oh, really?
Because I had to, because it wasn't in my Steam library, it was in Dad's. Hello!
Hello, Fluffy Puff 97.
We're doing good.
It's early, but it's always early when we stream, so you know.
My brain is cooked.
Are we cooked?
Are we cooked? Yeah, we're cooked.
We're cooked.
We're cooked.
Anyway, let's draw these pretty pictures.
All right, we're doing
Jack
something a little funky. About the DLC for Castle Crashers, which allows us to make our own little guys.
Yep.
So I'm gonna make
little guys.
me, and we might make Penny. We might do something else for Penny. Maybe Penny will draw.
Maybe I might draw my own dude.
You can draw your own dude.
I probably won't because I'm not good
No.
at
Bad.
art.
No. You are good at art. You lying sack.
I'm not
of shit.
as good at art.
You're not as practiced at art. Pretty cooked. I was studying till 4:50 a.m. Oh my god. Oh, for math. Ugh. Gross. So I got signed up for
See, the problem is like people outside the US have to do more than one math. We only have to do one math here. They have to do maths.
Oh gosh.
Like multiple maths.
Multiple maths.
Also, I don't know your art program. I'd have to
That's
like
fine.
learn a whole new art program on the fly.
No, you don't. It's easy.
I don't want to do that.
You don't even have to. It's Control-Z and draw. It's not that hard.
Fine. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it if I feel like it.
Yeah. You don't have to, but you can.
Yeah, but it's gonna look so much cuter if you do it.
Oh, you doubled your previous score. That's cool.
Hell yeah.
Ooh, Warlock pretending to be a rogue. Sounds great. I did maths once, but I did not inhale, so it's fine.
That's the wrong spot.
It is.
Circles. I hate circle tools. I don't know why. I hate them.
Wait, this one kind of has to be square.
Because it's like looking up from. It's like looking down at an angle. Also, there's all these like angles and shit. I'm not good at angles. I could draw exactly one pose, a second one maybe if I have a reference. I'm not saying references are a bad thing. No, references are freaking great.
No, use references. It's not cheating. Shut up.
It's not. No, I didn't say it was. References are freaking great.
I'm not talking to you. I'm not saying you shut up.
I'm just saying
I'm just saying
that
people shut up.
Okay, I'll shut up.
No! Not you.
I'll only shut up when I'm not supposed to. Never any other time. This is my favorite Castle Crasher song, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah, we're gonna repeat this one for until we get bored
About
of it.
30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Until we get bored of it.
I'm kind of hoping to speed draw this, honestly, so we can get into playing, but we'll see what actually happens.
We'll speed draw it, and then maybe we'll clean it up later. You know?
Yeah, maybe. I just really don't want it to look jittery. That's my worry. Yeah.
Well, we can do the thing, yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I could draw one pose from 3 angles. From 3 angles? That's like 3 poses.
Mm-hmm. That's basically 3 poses.
Luckily, those happen to be angles that let me turn it into a 3D model. Ah, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pose.
Yeah, a pose.
Yeah, it's an A pose.
It's an A pose.
Yeah. See, A pose is great though because you can use the symmetry tool for both the front and the back.
I pretty much have A pose as the thing I can draw to. If I have like a reference, I can kind of copy that reference and then jankily jank a pose over it. I feel like your face needs to be rounder.
It does.
You have such a round little face.
Yeah, I'm feeling that
you got round little cheeks and you got a round little chin.
I do.
And you can see your own face right there, like right on the screen. You can see your little guy.
Yeah.
You are a little guy. That's what I said. We're making a custom Castle Crashers character through the Castle Crashers Painter Boss Paradise DLC.
Yeah.
That allows you to do that. And what magic are you gonna use? Rainbow magic?
Yeah, probably.
Rainbow magic.
I also like, cause that's the one that Pink Knight uses, right?
Yeah, Pink Knight's rainbow magic. I'm honestly probably gonna be super boring and use the lightning magic.
No, that's not boring. That's just your classic.
Yeah.
I mean, the rainbow magic is my
Red
classic.
Knight. I mean, I always played Red Knight.
Yeah.
Because he has the best magic, and don't at me. Don't come at me with that Blue Knight propaganda. I know the freeze is good, but it's not catch literally every enemy in your lightning bolt and get infinite XP good, you know?
Yeah.
You know what's interesting, actually, is so Green Knight. Here's some Castle Crashers factoids for you. Green Knight is the only character that changed tiers with the art update.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So bye Hobby Ham.
See you, Ham.
Have fun working in an office, I guess.
You can watch the VOD later.
Yeah.
I think you did succeed to draw me, Luke.
But fuck, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, Green Knight. So something interesting is that all 4 of the knights were supposed to have their own unique combos and like fighting style.
Yeah.
But the only one that survived to the final game was Green Knight's unique heavy attack. Here's the problem though. With the way the game is played, Green Knight's unique heavy attack fucking sucks. Like, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. I think it looks really cool with the little backflip. but it makes juggling a lot harder.
Yeah.
And everybody else has exactly the same moveset, which, I mean, except for their magic and, like, starting stats and whatnot. But, like, everybody else has exactly the same melee moveset. And, like, it was cool that Green Knight had something unique, but it was also, like, not good gameplay-wise.
Yeah.
But when they updated the art, they changed it. They changed it so that Green Knight had the same combo. Just like had the basic combo. So Green Knight actually moved up into the higher tiers because his magic was always really good.
Yeah.
He's the only character in the game with poison magic.
Yeah.
And the poison is really good because it, like, you know, applies that damage over time and all that good shit. But like his heavy attack really nerfed him, and they changed it when they changed the art.
Switch over.
All right, let's see how these face blobs look in game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little twitchy. I feel like you need to zoom out and kind of equalize all the sizes.
Yeah. Garfield made me sad. No lasagna today. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, no lasagna today. We'll meet up with lasagna again when it's not so winter.
Yeah, I think it's the winter.
I think it's probably the winter.
Why? I said straight line.
No, you didn't.
Apparently.
Not according to the art program.
Okay.
Art is hard.
It is. Put it on the same fucking layer.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but I'm not.
Sorry, not sorry.
She's not sorry.
I am not sorry.
Ogres have layers, but Jack's sprite sheets are nice.
Yep.
Boots and cats.
I'm just jamming to this little tune. I know it's like a 3-minute loop, but I could jam to this all freaking day.
Literally all day.
And I have in the past.
Yeah. See if just straight shrinking down helps.
Might. Might helps. I don't know if it would. I don't know if it will helps, but it might helps.
No.
A little bit.
Yeah, it helped a little bit. There's
that
like
actually looks quite a bit better.
There's like one that.
There's two. or like one or two that are like...
I think it's this one.
Is it that one?
Yeah, and I think I had this problem before where like this sprite for whatever reason just trips me up, so I'm just gonna do this.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah. That's better, but now this needs to be a little bit more different.
Just a little bit different. Scooch it forward a little bit so that it's a little more turned towards the camera, right?
Yep. Towards to the right.
To the right, yeah. Painting.ping. The pingus.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's better.
that works.
It'll look a lot better when it has like details on it.
Yeah.
And you can like kind of fix the head shapes too.
I think I want to round this out here.
You have a round face.
Because I have a round face.
You have a round face. You have a face. See, part of the problem is I don't know what I look like, so I have a hard time drawing me.
Well, you can see yourself right there.
Well, sure, I can see myself there, but like...
See, I have just become so iconic.
It's true.
That, and I've drawn...
You have become an icon.
I truly just have drawn myself so many times that it's become habit, and I don't know how to draw anything else now.
Jack draws iconography.
Jack draws only Jack.
Jack draws Jack.
Jack draws Jack.
Twitch.tv.
Jack draws Jack. Can you imagine if that was my username and I just only drew myself?
Yeah. I mean, one of those things is already true.
One of those things
You can jam, but can you peanut
true.
butter? I can peanut butter. But can you mash potato?
What?
That's a dance. The mashed potato.
Oh, cool.
Jack draws Jack and sometimes stream assets.
Which are also Jack.
Which are also Jack.
I truly...
Jack draws Jack and occasionally Piplup.
And occasionally... I wish I could draw Piplup. I should draw Piplup.
Piplup's easy to draw.
Yeah, cool.
You need a face.
I do need a face.
You have no face right now. You are the Demogorgon. Sorry, I just started watching Stranger Things with my wife the other day. And,
oh, yeah.
Now I'm just like, oh, a guy with no face. That's the Demogorgon.
I have no context for this.
That's what the kids call the monster.
Yeah, no, I know it's the Demogorgon, but like, I really don't know anything else about it. It's Jack all the way down. No face has a face.
No face does have a face. Well, he has a mask of a face. And he has a mouth. But he doesn't really have a whole face. What's the difference between that one and the other one?
This one is the back.
Oh, that's the back. Okay. That makes sense.
Which is why I'm just copying and pasting.
Right, the head shape from the front. Yeah, that makes sense. See, the other problem is that I would draw one of these little guys, and then I would get frustrated.
Yeah.
And then I would stop drawing. Because that's how I work.
Don't.
Well, I can't not. Also, everyone has exactly the same arms and legs.
Yes.
This has been true since...
You can change them, but they do draw them for you.
Yeah.
And I am gonna do, like, outlines and stuff because that's the art style of the game. But I'm starting with what I know.
Yeah. Gotta outline that shit.
Actually, I'm gonna look at...
Castle Crasher guy.
I'll look at like how they do faces.
Of like the non-knight guys.
Yeah. They kind of just do whatever, I think.
Yeah. Usually they're like little beady eye guys.
Yeah. These boxes are actually much taller than the recommended sprite outline, and this frightens me. It makes it hard. I guess they just want to let you do whatever, so like if you wanted to have your head be like...
Right, well they want to
really
give you the
tall.
option to have your head be huge, you know?
Yeah. Like even the body, like you could do some
Yeah, they
funky
want
stuff
they
with
want
that.
you to have the option to like make your shit as big as you want.
Okay. Here's where I have to make a decision to not...
Just draw yourself all like chibi-fied.
I suddenly realized I think these sprites are exactly the same. Except this one's winking?
No, they're different angles.
Very subtle.
They're very subtly different, but they are different. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. They look very similar. That sucks. I seem to have 5 top hats atop my helmet. What if I wanted a 1950s beehive hairstyle? I need space for that shit.
Yeah, what if you're making a Team Fortress 2 character and you need to have a stack of hats? What if you're making just a clone of Hattie Haddington, but his hat is like 5 times as big?
Oh, look. They have this little guide. It is so slightly different.
Yeah, because they want it to be a smooth animation.
But then it just jumps. I guess it doesn't jump.
Nope. Doesn't jumps.
Alright. Enough fussing.
Okay,
I don't have time for this.
Would you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Would you make before you start adding details?
Yeah.
Would you make a new version of this right here, so I can use your face templates? I can use your face shapes for.
Yes. Let me. If we go into the game for a second here, and I can go.
So I don't have to like redraw the face shapes, because that seems like the hardest part, honestly.
Yeah, the shapes are gonna be the hardest part.
Actually, before you add details, do you want to do like the body shapes too?
Yeah, let's do that.
Although the bodies are going to be different because we're wearing like different clothes.
Yeah, but the face stealer arc. I'm gonna
look. I'm not trying to steal their face, just their head shape.
Yeah. She just wants my head.
I just want their head. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see. Yeah, it's like potato sack body.
Potato sack body is easy though. Like, yeah, face stealing Bimmy. I rustled some Rube's face. Me, Bimmy.
These I'm pretty much just gonna trace, I think.
Yeah. Trace body.
We can change the song if you guys.
Now?
Yeah, if you guys get
this
tired
is like the
of
fourth
it.
or fifth loop of this.
I will
so, like,
never get tired of this song.
I won't either, but I think that our audience might get tired of listening to the same song, especially because when we're drawing, we're not talking as much.
That's true.
There's not as much is going on. Castle Crashers, Painter Boss theme. Yeah, Painter Boss is a good theme. Bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum, bum, bum, bum. This game has a fucking amazing soundtrack. You know who, I realize I don't know who actually did the music for Castle Crashers.
Probably one of two guys.
Well, the behemoth is bigger than just, Tom Fulp and Dan Howell.
Well, but when did the music get added? Because originally it was just them, right?
Well, originally it was just them for, like, Alien Hominid. But there were more guys for, there were at least a couple more guys for Castle Crashers, I think. Because Alien Hominid, the Behemoth started as a Flash,
yeah, it was Newgrounds.
Alien Hominid started as a Flash game, because Tom Fulp runs Newgrounds.
Oh, he runs Newgrounds?
Yeah.
I didn't know
Tom
that.
Fulp is the Newgrounds guy.
Wow.
He runs Newgrounds.
Man, there's nowhere to host my cool games. Well,
here's some knowledge that'll mildly annoy you for the rest of time. I mean, I guess.
Penny does that to me all the time.
Yeah, it's only fair. Okay, apparently the soundtrack is a collaboration.
Between?
Like a bunch of different artists.
Oh, cool.
The main theme was made by someone named, let's see, Wikipedia credits the composer as Matthew Harwood.
Everyone knows Wikipedia is the most reliable source. That's not sarcastic. It was a little sarcastic, and then I remembered that everything else is AI now.
Huh. Nice. According to Dan Paladin, the head artist, the art style was based heavily off of River City Rampage, which, now that I know that, makes complete sense. Still the most reliable, just the benchmark is lowered all around. Yeah.
Well, I remember my teachers being like, don't use Wikipedia. And I think they said that because Wikipedia is not a primary source. Not necessarily.
I'm trying to find,
the
like,
information is wrong.
Information that is not just fucking... that is not AI generated.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to find. Okay, so it looks like the main theme was done by someone named David Orr, O-R-R. And a bunch of the music was done by him and by that other guy I mentioned, Harwood, and even Dan Paladin did some.
Nice.
As well as some collaborators from the net. So it's really a group effort.
I hate that typing minus AI doesn't really remove AI results. Yeah. Well, it can't anymore.
Oh, see, I see what's going on. So the base form of the characters all have the same limbs, right?
Yeah.
But the beefy ones, that's where you can change the limbs, right? That's what it looks like. Those are the beefy limbs.
Oh, these are the beefy limbs?
Yeah, those are the beefy limbs.
Well, why would you do that, though?
Why would you change the beefy limbs?
If you can't change the normal limbs.
Because the beefy limbs are easy to see. The normal limbs are just kind of limbs.
You're just kind of limbs.
I am kind of limbs. That's a belt. Alright, one more loop of this and we should change it up.
Y'all are tiny. You beefy limbs.
Ripped sleeves for beefy limbs too. I fear no man, but that thing scares me.
What's that from?
That's the heavy from TF2, talking about the pyro.
Yeah, I love Pyro.
Pyro is our non-binary champion. Just our everyone's favorite non-binary psychopath.
They don't know what a gender is.
I'm pretty sure they think gender is something flammable.
Probably.
Actually, according to the Meet the Pyro video, they have no idea what they're doing.
No, they have no idea.
Because they are, in fact, constantly hallucinating.
Yeah.
Because, again, they're literally psychotic. And I don't even mean that in a detrimental way. I mean they literally are experiencing psychosis.
Yeah. They're having a blast.
And they're having a blast doing it.
This is...
Pyro's the best way, one of the best ways to describe any online community. They have no idea what they're doing and they're having a blast doing it.
I'm not drawing the muscles.
Not drawing muscles?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't know, the idea of me with big muscles just makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. I'm really tempted to just make the, my beefy sprite.
Yeah.
Just exactly the same as my regular sprite, except I have huge knockers. That's the only thing that changes.
You would...
That and I get like really big limbs and huge knockers, and that's it.
Well, you'd have to make yourself taller too, because like that's where the head is gonna be.
Yeah. Well, the head's gonna be wherever the art ends.
Really?
I think that's actually how the program works.
Hang on.
Is it takes like where your art goes and
that's crazy.
Kind of puts things where they're supposed to be.
Wow, that means you can't have like any stray pixels. That's crazy. That's really good if that's the way it works.
I have no idea if that's actually how it works, but that seems to make sense given the
like the videos and stuff?
Yeah, like what I've seen of it. And how you can kind of, you don't have to follow the guidelines, you know?
Yeah.
And it just kind of puts things where they are supposed to go.
Let me get...
Ooh, Necromancer.
Necromancer?
This song fucking rules. Oh, this isn't the Necromancer theme. This is a song based on the Necromancer theme.
I'm gonna get copyright struck for that one.
Castle Crasher's Necromancer boss? Just search it. Search it.
Yeah.
Search it, search it, search it.
Well, here's what I want to do. Is if I can find it in here.
Blah, blee, blah, blue, blee, blee. Till Death Do I Impart is a pretty good song too, but it's not as good as
I don't see it in here. So I don't want to keep,
Yeah, OST Necromancer.
yeah, but I don't want to keep, like, switching back and forth, so I'm just gonna...
I do. Necromancer.
Oh, okay. I don't have it.
Simple Sight. Necromancer theme. Yeah.
Okay.
This is a real one. This song fucking rules. Just make the BB spray smaller.
I could.
It's the tiniest swole.
I could just do like these.
You'd still have the huge limbs.
I would. It would be really funny. This one's got a... I guess this is when if you're being thrown.
Or if somebody's throwing you.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, no, I meant if you're throwing somebody. Eat the sandwich, becomes swole.
And then these are just like
That's
portraits.
the portraits. And the player piece for the barbarian escape mode.
I see.
None of you can see it, but I'm dancing.
She is.
Oh, I made myself tired. I danced for like 1 second and I made myself tired. Why am I like this? Chat, why am I like this? I really hope we can, like,
I know.
actually play something today. Though this is pretty fun, I gotta say. Maybe I've been sleeping on these art streams.
Yeah, maybe you have.
Maybe I've been sleeping.
You've literally been sleeping on the art streams.
Yeah, I've literally been sleeping on the art streams because I'm an eepy little sheepy. I'm just an eepy little guy. The Mibsel is eepy and me be too sleepy. I love that it's just like...
Yeah. I've had a bite taken out of my head.
I can make a living doing this. I don't, but I could. Let's count in TF2. Is this how you hair?
No.
Is this how you hair?
No. It's really, really not.
I hair you. Like I hear you, but it's different. The Mibsel is an eeby little guy and me be too sleepy. Good night, Miss the Missile. Art thou a clown?
Yes. It's just art style.
You're an art style.
Yes.
You're literally an art.
That's true.
Till desktop Jack art.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have you to here to read chat while I'm arting.
Till Death Do Us Art is actually a fucking amazing album name.
Oh yeah.
That would be like a crazy like album name.
Early 2000s.
I already said that. It sounds like a
early
like
2000s emo band.
I was gonna say it sounds like an early oh god, what's that band called? You know, the one with that guy. It always had those really
Fall Out Boy?
overly complicated names. Was it Fall Out Boy?
That's Fall Out Boy.
It's Fall Out Boy.
You might be also thinking of, because you said that
Panic at the Disco.
Panic at the Disco.
Panic at the Disco. Yeah, I was thinking of Panic at the Disco. It has that guy, Brendan Urie.
Yeah. Asshole.
He brings shame upon the name Yuri.
True. It's not spelled the same though.
I know. Which is good, because then he would bring shame upon both lesbianism and the first guy to go to space.
Or like panic before getting into the car that's supposed to be heading to the disco.
Mood. Oh, see, now you're doing all this complicated stuff like gradients and
I always do gradients.
colors that
Look at my
means
eyes.
I won't
Look at my
be able
eyes.
to keep up. I won't be able to keep up with my own little guy.
This is just the portrait.
I know, but I got to do a portrait of my own little guy too, right? Hey, making it look so good. So good at art.
Yeah, you know how I did that?
I know. You did art.
A lot.
Also,
And this is the one thing that I draw.
when you said earlier that like I'm not bad at art, I'm just less practiced. Yeah, those are the same thing.
No, it's not. Trust
The
me,
more
it's
practiced you are, the better at your art you are.
Yes, that is true. But
It's the same thing.
the reason I say it's different is because you can still be bad at art even if you draw a whole lot. I've seen it.
Okay, but the only bad art is art that is like racist.
That's true.
Or has like no soul behind it. Or is AI generated.
Yeah, true. I'm bad at maths. Same, Luke.
It's hard to be bad at something you do every day, but some people sure try.
Me.
Not you. The government.
The government. Can't forget the eyebrow flick or Penny will get mad at me.
Yep. You gotta do the stupid eyebrow thing.
Yeah.
I've discovered that my eyebrows are like almost perfectly like the little like swoop. You know the eyebrow option that's like always available in like RPGs and shit,
Yeah.
where it goes like up and then down.
Mm-hmm.
I've got that eyebrow shape, except I've got a stupid little swoop at the end of it. Swooping. Babe, I love your eyebrows. They're subtle, but they're there. Yeah, comma lack thereof. My wife's eyebrows were eaten by an alligator when she was very young.
I can't tell if you're joking or not.
You'll never know. Ooh, we got the spooky music.
There's spooky music.
Airtime.
Yep.
Gonna spend the most time on the least important part of this whole sprite work.
Yeah. I started and then I started trying hard and I can't stop.
Yeah, try hard. Just have like an alpha lock button?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, different frog based OST. We are thankfully not playing Crazy Frog. About the right time period though, I think. I did not know that this song was called Spanish Waltz.
Me neither.
Yeah, the UK did get to keep his frog dick. I'm glad that we didn't. I'm not interested in his little frog ween. Speaking of weens, anyone excited for December ween?
December ween?
Yeah, December ween. It's 55 days after Halloween.
Oh. I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, every year, there's, on the 25th of December, we have Decemberween.
That's Christmas.
Where you get yourself, no, it's non-denominational Decemberween. Listen, if you grew up in the 2000s, you would, and not like the 2010s like you did, you would know Decemberween.
See.
Come on, Luke, you don't know Decemberween? Children, all of you.
Yeah, Luke's younger than me, I think.
Children, all of you. No, I'm not talking about Festivus. I'm talking about Decemberween.
Yeah, Festivus for the rest of us.
Oh my god. All of you are so small and young.
No, Kenj doesn't even know. Kenj is older than you.
At the internet on the wrong time, I guess. Decemberween is what they called Christmas in the Homestar Runner cartoons because they didn't want to say Christmas.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I know Festivus was a Seinfeld bit. I knew that. But no, Decemberween is the Homestar Runner version of Christmas. It's non-denominational Christmas. I was so into Homestar Runner as a kid. I probably watched every cartoon on that site like 1,000 times. You know they're still making them? Also, did you know that the Gravity Falls Summerween bit actually probably is a reference to Decemberween?
Oh, cool.
And by that I mean one of the brothers chaps, I think it's Mike Chapman or Matt Chapman. It's one of the two Chapmans. Wrote for Gravity Falls.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the two Homestar Runner writers wrote for Gravity Falls.
That's cool.
Was like one of the main writers on that series. Which is fucking crazy to me. Like, he's actually doing stuff. Also, did you know that Matt Chapman did all of the voices?
Really?
Yeah. With
for
one
Homestar
exception.
Runner?
Yeah, with one exception. With a couple of exceptions, actually. I don't remember which one of the brothers chaps she's married to, but Missy Chapman, one of their wives, did Marzipan's voice. And Mike Chapman, his brother, did all of the like voices for the Cheats cartoons. So it was his brother doing the impressions of those characters incorrectly. So that they almost sounded like them, but not like quite.
That's really funny.
I always kill the barbarian boss so fast, I almost never like listen to his theme.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is the war machine. I always kill that even faster. You should give the blocking animation like a little angry eyeball. You know?
I could, but I think it's almost funnier if I just...
That's like the heavy attack. You should give them little angry eyebrows. Because you're like actively attacking there. Oh, you should make that one like a little squint, like you're hiding behind the shield. Oh no, like a closed eye. Oh yeah, the worried face. Because you're like, oh no, I'm being attacked.
Yeah, that's good. Alright, try hard time.
Try hard time. Oh god.
I can't not.
Help, I'm being repressed. Help, I'm being oppressed. You all saw it. And there's the back of your head, so. Did you make a, like, template before you started adding details?
No!
So that I could...
Well, they're on different layers.
Oh, okay. So that I could, like, not have to redraw all the head shapes. Because I don't want to redraw the head shapes. I don't know what to say because it's the art time. Chat, talk to me so that I can feel like I'm doing my job. Somebody give me something to ramble about. I've run out of rambling.
You?
Well, no, but I need a ramble prompt so I can ramble more.
A ramble prompt?
I need a ramble prompt.
You playing Elden Ring lately?
Oh, Elden Ring. I can ramble about that. I have also been playing Elden Ring recently. I started a save file where I am cosplaying Alucard from Castlevania.
You're cosplaying as him?
Yeah, I'm doing like a run as Alucard.
That's cool.
So I'm only using like it's mostly melee. I'm using the rapier because it looks the closest to the art, or sorry, the epee, because it looks the closest to the art for the Alucard sword. Though I may switch to Rogier's rapier when I get it, and I'm gonna do like I'm gonna get the like vampiric, like multi-stab ability so I can. Give me a sec. Health from the EpiPen. They're both used for stabbing. So I can do like a lifesteal blood attack. Dark metamorphosis. Stealth and Katana is a good way to do it. My favorite build that I've done so far is a split dex intelligence build, focusing around the Moonlight Katana. Or the Moonveil Katana, or whatever it's called. Because then you can do like, you do the quick draw EI stuff, but it shoots slash waves, and it's super cool. Oh yeah, this is called Penny grabs all the gold and doesn't leave anybody for any for anybody else.
Yeah, true.
Apparently this song is called Race Around the World. Did not know that. This is called Penny Won the Duel.
Yeah.
And is now making out with the princess. Because she's gay.
Gay.
Gay for princesses.
Gay for princesses. Oh yeah, we get to actually make ourselves make out with the princesses. Yeah.
That means Jack, for the first time ever in their life, might make out with someone.
You don't know what I've done.
Yeah, but I can reasonably assume, given your preferences and proclivities, that
I didn't always know.
Is not exactly on your list of priorities.
I can say I never enjoyed making out with someone. I was just kind of. It was just like, this is a thing I'm doing.
Oh hell yeah. I can't see what the Jumper. Apparently the song is called Jumper by Waterflame. Oh yeah, you got kind of like stupid hair in the back.
I do. I have stupid hair.
This is why nobody gets to look at the back of your head except me. They can't stop me.
Yeah, but it's
you got like
stupid.
Mario hair in the back.
I really do, like, actually.
Yeah, you actually do have like Mario hair. I can tell you all that the little representation of Jack there, 100% accurate.
This is just what this is basically just what I look like.
That's just what they look like.
See, okay, this is really smart because if I ever do IRL content, there's no like disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
I see VTubers who have done like IRL content and have like switched to doing more IRL content, and it's cool, but they switch back and forth between their VTuber and their real face, and it's kind of jarring
See, it's gonna be super jarring if you ever see me again IRL, because I look nothing like this little avatar.
That's not true.
Well, my hair's a completely different color.
Now? Not when I started. Dye your hair.
It still was a different color. It's more like a reddish pink rather than like the lighter pink. It was like a darker.
Oh, well, that's
like
because that's probably because we
pink.
didn't want to bleach your hair that much.
Well, I did bleach my hair, but like.
Yeah, but your hair probably bleaches like
I haven't really re-dyed it since I dyed it that one time. I should, but I just haven't really bothered. And my head hurts all the time, so you know I don't want to like bleach my shit. My hair, not like my, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Does chat? Not likely.
Yeah, we gotta get my wife a.
Yeah, Ham's hobby. Ham's hobby is doxing people.
We gotta get the wife that I'm not married to yet. It's A Morte.
Hey, Nemo Morte, how you doing today?
We gotta get my wife that I'm not married to yet. A VTuber model.
Yeah, we have to
so that she can stream with us. Because she's funny and interesting, and I love her.
Well, and she has an expressed an interest.
Yeah. Well, she has, just like not on this stream.
Yeah.
Have fun drawing that hair swoop 1,000 times.
Yeah, this is not gonna be smooth.
I know we're not married yet. That's why I said wife I'm not married to yet.
She's getting smarter.
My PNG tuber kind of looks like me. Yeah. Trying out the acronym. Cool. WNMY. Yeah. My PNG tuber basically looks like me, except cuter. Which, I mean, is hard to do, but like... it succeeded.
It's the art style. It does it to everyone.
It's the art style, yeah. Also, my ears aren't quite that pointy.
No. Wish they were though. That'd be kind of
I wish they were, but that would be cool. But my ears are not that pointy or long. I would look hella cute with big long ears though. Like big long goblin ears. I want ears that like go out past my shoulders. I want
That'd
to walk
be so difficult to deal with.
I want to like bump my ears into doorways when I go through them. I like goblins, okay? They're really cute.
Do.
All these names are so friggin' random.
What?
The names of the songs.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that one was called The Show, and this one's called T'Chak.
Yeah.
All the forest ones seem to be by Water Flame, though, which is some of my like favorite soundtrack. Elf jewelry, getting twigs caught in your big ass ears. I don't know, I guess. To chalk when the walls fell. I don't get it. I don't know what that reference is.
Ken just making references no one understands again.
And then Luke just said more words, and like, I don't get those either. Are you taking your meds?
I'm trying to remember if I took them this morning. I didn't. That's why I feel bad.
It is called T'Chak, but it's spelled differently.
Doing drugs on stream.
Doing drugs on stream. You gotta move the hair like way down for that one.
Yeah. Take it like this, and then you just go. Like that. That works. And then you take this one. Go whoop. Boink. Magic. I probably should have done the gradient altogether. That's
Oh, it's Star Trek. I've been outed as a fake fan. Been outed as a fake Trekkie. No, I haven't. I just haven't seen all of... I haven't seen all of anything because the way I watched Star Trek was like... My grandmother would be watching it.
Oh yeah, Grandma loves Star Trek.
I would basically join in for like an episode or two, and that was just a thing. Like, anytime she was watching Star Trek, I would like join in for a couple episodes. And that's how I grew up on Star Trek, and that's how I love Star Trek. And I just haven't like binged the series, you know?
Yeah.
Like watched it all the way through. You should have done that shading before you moved on.
I should have, but I didn't.
That, so that it wouldn't be like different on every sprite.
Yeah, but now it is, so it's artistic.
You're artistic.
I sure am. But I think you misspelled it.
Hang on, let me check. Oh, right, yeah.
Autistic.
Yeah, it says here you're autistic.
Be really funny. Imagine you're getting like an autism assessment and they're like, okay, results are in. You are
Artistic.
artistic.
Same thing, really.
A lot of the time, yeah. There's a lot of artists who are also
Artism.
autistic.
You have artism.
You have autism.
You got a little face. Congratulations, you got a little face.
Yep.
Congratulations. Artism. Yartism. Pirate autism. Yeah. Are you autistic about pirates, or are you a pirate with autism? The world may never know.
Yes.
Or both.
That's why you became a pirate.
Yeah, you became a pirate because you're autistic about pirates. And then somebody tries to mansplain to you that, like...
Sorry, continue.
Somebody tries to mansplain to you, like, actually, pirates were just, like, ruthless killers and robbers and whatnot. And then you ruthlessly kill and rob them. Freaking corn boss. Actually, you shouldn't like pirates because the versions of pirates that we have are just romanticized. It's like, shut the fuck up.
I like romanticizing history. It's fun.
Just shut up. Pirates are cool. Some of the most successful pirates in history were ladies.
Yeah.
Lesbian pirates for all your dreams come true.
Gotta do for you. What?
The deal is, give us all your gold and we'll let you live.
Oh, yeah, okay. Feel free.
Everybody knows that Blade Treasure Island, yeah. A lot of the pirate tropes that we have are from Treasure Island. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot more sense. Here's the thing. It is tactically a lot smarter to have a reputation of being reasonable and taking prisoners, right? Because if you're like a ruthless take no prisoners kind of thing, then like the crew's gonna fight. The crew you're trying to take on is gonna fight to the bitter end. If you have a reputation for like if you had a reputation for like, you know, taking prisoners and like negotiating and whatnot, then you're much more likely to be successful because people will be like, okay, like just take the stuff and like don't kill us. We don't want to die.
Yeah.
People are more likely to surrender. Yeah, the quartermaster actually had more power on the ship than the captain much of the time, because they're it's like how elected officials like are the faces of things, but it's their secretaries that do most of the stuff. Looks pretty good. Yeah, the captains were in charge during combat, and the quartermasters were in charge out of combat. And most pirates had like salaries, you know?
Yeah.
And they were paid from like the treasury and from the loot that they got, because that's how, you know, pirates got their money, is by stealing it.
Yeah.
Or occasionally by negotiating with the crown. A lot of pirates were commissioned by governments, and they're basically like, we will they're like, we will pay you to attack only our enemies, like raid enemy ships instead of our ships. I believe they were called Corsairs. I believe that's what a Corsair was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm?
They're originally mercenaries.
Ah.
You had a bunch of heavily armed people with ships who are now no longer being paid by the Spanish. Corsairs sailed the Mediterranean. Okay, yeah. Emlo, we're doing this instead of Lelz and lasagna.
Lasagna's taking a break because
Lasagna's taking
can't
a nap.
focus on it. I'm having an ADHD.
Hello, fellow road crew worker.
So instead, I bought the DLC for Castle Crashers.
Elves and lasagna. It looks good with the outline. And it helps match with the rest of the art style.
Yeah.
La Sagana.
Yeah. Then we get Castle Crashers together!
Yeah, we could Castle Crasher.
That'd be so
We
fun.
could Castle Crash. Crash Castle. I haven't played Castle Crashers with y'all in so freaking long.
We should do that on stream, all of us.
Yeah, we should. As ourselves. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Black actually has heard that because I mentioned it on their stream on Monday. I was in the audience
For once.
for once. Well, they're playing Pokemon, so like I can't miss that.
Yeah. I think
And then
they might be doing
left
Pokemon
early
again
because yeah, Moxie's hands hurt real fast these days. That's part of the problem. Is like button mashing is not as easy or simple as it used to be.
today. Yeah.
I have Castle Crashers on Steam. I don't have the DLC though.
Well, that we can fix.
Also, I don't want to like redraw.
You
I'll
wouldn't
just
have.
play local on here.
Yeah, we'll just play local here.
I don't know why I suddenly became grunty.
Are you not usually?
I am usually grunty. But I'm not usually Gruntilda Winky Bottom from Banjo-Kazooie. A game you still have to play.
I know.
A game I will not stop harrying you about until you play.
Yeah, that's fair.
You don't have a nose or mouth.
Yep.
I guess nobody else does either.
Well, I think Alien does.
And Alien Hominid does, and the little villagers do.
Yeah, they do.
They have a little mouth.
I think that's done in black, so I can do that with the outline, the upper outline.
The mouth?
Even Hobbyham has played Banjo-Kazooie? Oh, man.
Yeah, you have no excuse, Jack. It's the best game.
Evil wedding time.
Yeah. I love that this song is called Till Death Do I Impart.
Poor Cyclops, honestly.
Poor Cyclops. His best friend got killed at his wedding while he was in the bathroom.
Yeah.
He picked the like least opportune time to have to pee.
Really, really did. Honestly, if you had to fight the both of them together, that would be...
Nathan, you haven't played Banjo-Kazooie? I mean, Blackfoot, you haven't played Banjo-Kazooie?
Everyone knows their name. It's not a secret.
I'm shooketh.
She was so shook
good.
she used your government name.
Yeah. Luke, you haven't played Banjo-Kazooie!
Okay, good. I'm not alone.
It's so good! I grew up with Banjo-Tooie rather than Kazooie. I played Banjo-Kazooie when later. And then I really finished it when it came to the Xbox 360. And I have no regrets about anything. Because it's so good. Being born in 2009. You're a child. You're a baby child. Little baby. Little baby boy.
I can't believe I'm finally older than someone in chat, though.
I don't believe that people can be born in 2009.
You're lying. That's not an age.
That's not an age a person can be. Luke is our child, our baby boy.
Our baby boy.
Our baby boy. Baby boy baby.
So that he's not a baby? He's in college?
No, wrong.
Or
people born in 2009 can't be in college. They're only...
Penny, I'm 23 and I was born in 2002.
Yeah. But that means that... Yes, but like you have to be like 18 to be in college. Okay, but UK college doesn't count. That's just fancy high school.
That's just fancy high school. Well, what do you think community college is? That's what I'm doing.
16 to 18. Community college is just college for poor people.
Yeah.
And it's great. Way better than rich people college.
You know I'm gonna go to rich people college too, right?
Yeah. Except no, you're not, because you're not a rich people.
Oh, I am, because I'm gonna go to the toy design college.
Is that a private university?
Yeah.
Cool.
Mom thinks we can get the government to pay for it.
I don't think we can get the government to pay for anything. I've been trying for a year to get the government.
Well, it's not actually the government. It's like an autism program.
I've been trying for over a year to get the government to pay for my continued existence, and they refuse to do so.
There's a...
I have lawyers.
Yeah. There's what is it
That's
called?
how you know I'm desperate.
It's like
I hired
the
lawyers.
Department of Rehabilitation, and they have like an autism thing that apparently you can get like money if you're autistic.
I want money for being autistic.
Yeah, and then it's like...
I never have any money because I'm autistic and my special interest is video games.
Yeah, so basically it's like supposed to help.
There are two subjects that you never get me started on, by the way. Those subjects are Sonic the Hedgehog and Kingdom Hearts. But if you get me started on either of those things, I will not stop. It is impossible to stop me. Okay, listen. About the Gunpla thing. My best friend, I'm not even going to say childhood best friend, because even though we don't talk that much these days, he's still my best friend. Is into Gunpla. I saw secondhand the kind of damage that it can do to one's budget. And so I just stay away from that. See, he graduated from Legos to Gunpla.
Oh, yeah.
By graduated, I mean he still does Lego stuff. He just, like, you know, does Gunpla also. Gunpla. Such a fun word to say, Gunpla. You know, the Japanese love their abbreviations.
Mm-hmm. That's because there's a lot of really long Japanese words.
Yeah.
Japanese people love efficiency.
God, I want to play the video game.
I know.
I know, and then there's a whole other, like, dude to make, because you gotta make me too, or else I can't.
Well, we could play.
But we can't play if I'm not there. You need a little smile. You need a little smile face.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be in black, though. It should be in, like, color. Perfect, I love them. It's a little jagged.
Yeah. It's the brush I'm using. I started using this one and then I forgot about it, so... Keep doing that.
Flip it upside down.
Castle Crashers is such a vibe. The music is so good. 1/144th scale?
Yeah.
That's tiny.
Not really. Gundam are huge. Big. They're giant robots.
That looks pretty good.
It does look pretty good.
I missed a line somewhere. Wait, what? I swear I did those.
You missed these ones.
How? I swear to God I did those.
Maybe you put them on a different layer accidentally?
No, I just didn't do them.
Just didn't do them.
Alright, that's fine.
Because you can do them now. Wow. Man, mine's not gonna look nearly as good.
It will. I'll help you.
Okay. You're gonna need to...
I'm not gonna do it for you, but I will help you.
6.5 inches for a 1/44th scale. 1 to 1/44 scale.
That's fucking huge.
Yeah. Gundams are huge. They're big walking fuck off tanks. There we go. Looking good.
That's really cute.
And the outline helps smooth out the inconsistencies.
Wait, give me the controller. Look at where the question mark is. It looks like it's your question mark.
I'm a question mark. I'm like, eh?
Huh?
I'm eternally confused. That's just how it go. You didn't make a weapon.
No, not yet.
Oh, that's not it. Your Oh no, you have no arms.
I have no arms. I'll have to put the arms back eventually. I do have legs. Where did the legs come from? I guess I just have legs.
You just have leg.
Can I undo the beefy?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I guess you can edit your arms and legs.
Well, you can't. You can edit your arms.
I guess you can edit your arms. Cool.
In the beefy mode, but not in the regular mode. See.
Well, wouldn't it default to the?
No, because the beefy arms are on the sprite sheet.
Mm.
All right.
Yeah, looks pretty good.
Gotta do this.
Yeah, and you need a weapon too.
Yeah, I need a weapon. I'm gonna do my
Like a. See, here's the thing. I checked this out. You can get whatever weapon you want, but it'll always look like the. You have the option to make it look like the whatever weapon you set.
Oh, cool.
So you can change your stats however you want, and you can choose whether you want the whether you want it to be the you know, or the other.
Yeah.
If you want it to be the default skin or the skin you set for your weapon. So, you know, if I'm making my own dude, there's nothing to stop me from giving myself big old knockers. No one can stop me.
I guess.
No one can stop me. I have no idea what outfit I want to wear.
You could do. You could do the one.
I could do the one on my little sprite.
You could do the one on your little sprite. You could also do the one that I have designed recently, which I could pull up.
You could
without showing.
I would need a reference. Yeah. We'll get to it.
This is.
It's like rotated a little.
It's down a little. This one.
That's rotated more.
Like, yeah.
That one's rotated even more because you can see the front is here.
Back. That's
the back. The back. Like Da Boys. Boys in Da Hood.
What?
I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Boys in Da Hood was a rap group, I think.
Ah, cool.
Well, maybe they should. Maybe Da Boys in Da Hood should take less Viagra.
What?
The comments.
A little TV head? That'd be cute.
Little TV head would be cute. Thank you for changing the subject.
You're welcome.
I know its lyrics.
Hmm?
I know its lyrics. I'm just fucking around. I'm fucking around, Kenj.
Yeah, Kenj.
Yeah, Kenj. I'm fucking around.
Fucking around.
Fucking around, Kenjamin.
Kenjamin.
Yeah. You're not to blame for my filthy mind. My filthy mind is entirely my own fault.
No, it's all your fault, Kenj.
Nope.
No, you know whose fault it is? Jeremy. I know you're watching, Jeremy.
Who's Jeremy?
Someone watching the VOD. I just freaked someone out real bad.
Jack, we all know nobody watches the VOD.
No, nobody watches the VOD. Fuck Jeremy.
Jeremy Fitzgerald?
No, the Jeremy
From
watching the
Five
VOD.
Nights at Freddy's.
Nah, I bet anyone in Five Nights at Freddy's is probably an asshole, honestly.
Considering that all of the current theory, game theory, is that all of the protagonists from the different FNAF games were all Mike Afton.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and he's actually an immortal zombie.
Yeah, that tracks.
And that's why the animatronics all attack him, is because they think he's his dad, who's the murderer.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
They're mistaking him for his dad, who was a murderer and who was doing so as a night guard.
What is this?
That's your shield.
Oh, that's the side of the shield.
That's the side of the shield.
Okay. Alright, let me do the weapon.
I didn't say anything about Gregory. Gregory. He's the guy from Security Breach. He's the kid who's the protagonist of Security Breach.
Ah,
So what's your weapon gonna be?
Sewing needle.
Sewing needle? That's a pretty good one. It's true. Gregory is a protagonist that is not Mike. Also, there was somebody named Jeremy who got his face cut off. But he cut his own face off. Because, you know, that's a thing. Oh, that's the thread.
It's a little leather wrap.
Ah, because it's, yeah.
I don't know where exactly it gets
Well, you
held.
can adjust it. You can adjust it
Yeah.
once you find out where it gets held. Yeah. The dev named Jeremy and Help Wanted cut his own face off. It's gruesome.
I saved it.
We'll go into the test creation. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there it goes. Oh, okay. It gets held like way at the bottom.
Okay, so you gotta move it down and make it long.
Yeah. If I just shift it. That.
Yeah, but now it'll be too short. So you gotta lengthen.
Yeah, I will.
You gotta long it.
I will. I just need to make sure this actually works because I don't know how their system works.
Yeah.
because I can make it. So we'll lengthen it and we'll just deal with it being like this.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't realize how long this was actually gonna take.
Well, it's an art stream.
It's the art stream. We're art streaming. Actually, what if I just did the whole...
Make it real long. Make a real long needle. Long to needle. Yay! Black's back.
Yay!
Yeah, coffee. And breakfast.
Gotta have your coffee. It holds it at the very end. But it's kind of cool. Like, yeah, let me show you. Secret time! Here, Secrets. You guys can look at this.
Secret. I've got a secret. You can look at little idling Jack there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the final form of before I play this action game, I have to customize my character.
Yeah.
See? Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So that's what
using
I'm
that
making.
for?
Oh, that's my new VTuber.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Little adventure stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
What's mine look like?
Yours, I don't have drawn out like this yet, but I
Like,
do have the little. I sent you the concept art. Remember?
Did you?
This one.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be us. Except I don't think I'm doing this. Before I play this action game, I have to construct my character from its very bones.
Yeah. Anyway, back to arting.
Yeah.
Just arting around.
Just arting around.
I wonder if you can get the weapon behind the hand.
I don't know.
I'm gonna look it up.
You do that. I'm gonna use symmetry. That would be smart. Before you can play Castle Crashers, you must first create the universe. I have a question for those among chat who might consider playing my game once it comes out. Would you guys prefer to have your own customizable character or a pre-made one which is voice acted? That depends on the game. I know this is probably not helpful at all, but that's really up to the dev. So the question for you is, it'll be a semi-open world RPG. Are you telling a particular story, or are you telling the player's story? So if you're telling a particular story, like The Legend of Zelda, you want a protagonist that is, Link. Although Link is almost a customizable character. But like, are you telling the story of the player, or are you telling the story you want to tell? Because those are two very different things. And that's how I would decide whether you're doing character customization. Also, character customization is hard to implement. It takes a lot of art to do that.
Oh, I'm just...
You pondering the nature of clouds?
No. I'm pondering the nature of making this weapon look like it's behind the hand.
Oh, I don't think... We have to figure out...
I think it would do that by default.
Yeah. May not. May just be a thing that... is part of Castle Crashers. I might lean towards, I want to have a world the player can engage in the world where the events that they can be a part of if they want. There are events that they can be part of if they want. Yeah, you could do something like Fallout with a few dialogue choices. Let's see how this looks.
Yeah.
It looks pretty good. Oh, what?
Oh yeah, that's the painter that's the painter boss's magic.
That's cool!
I guess you gotta go with that, huh?
Maybe. I think you can change it.
You can change it, but like, that's one of the options.
Yeah, look at all these magics. Yeah, this is
Pink magic.
battle block.
Yep.
Healing. Erotic. Yeah, pink is what I'm used to, the pink magic. But I kind of like the painter boss magic.
Yeah.
It kind of fits me.
It does. You just spawn little guys.
Just spawn little guys. Painter boss is definitely gonna be mine. Maybe I'll do oh yeah, ugly little guys. Maybe I'll do
okay, what if you
this one because Nathan's gonna do painter boss.
Yeah.
So we can be different.
Yeah. Okay, what if you cut your
Look at these
are you not gonna
portraits.
customize your
No, I am.
Oh yeah, they're hella sick. I would say your beefy form.
These updated portraits are insane.
Yeah, the updated portraits are hella sick.
No, we're gonna do the
I would say if you like well, we'll see how it looks in the actual game, and then maybe we'll come back and like cut a hand hole out of the
yeah.
the thing if it
Alright. Beefy mode. Put it here.
beefy mode's so funny to me.
It's so funny.
It's really funny. Yeah, cutting out the waist like that is a good idea.
Yeah. Where they already have a guide for it, basically.
Yeah.
Not against diving into the files to change a few textures around. It might be cool to summon real ugly little guys.
Instead of the ones in game.
That might break things.
Yeah, it would probably break things. I don't really know what's going on with that one.
Don't know, but I'm gonna draw it.
Like, is that an arm over there? Like, what's going on?
The
with
arms
that?
are done separately.
I know, but like, what's going on with that? Like, is that the lower body there, or is it like diving?
Yeah, I think it's like diving. It shouldn't break anything as long as it's only textures that get changed. Well, but if we're playing online, I don't know. I don't know how that works.
It's Beefy Jack time.
Yeah, Beefy Jack. Now at Jack in the Box.
Well, presumably, if you're playing online, it would only apply to It would only visually apply to the person who is has the files changed. Yeah,
That's
textures
true.
are client side. Oh, this is Medusa's fight.
Yeah.
Medusa fight, I always forget the Medusa fight's a thing, because it only takes like 30 seconds. Like, it's a pretty cool boss fight, but by the time you get there, you're often so strong that you can just, like, fucking wipe the floor with them. Jack's dead now.
Jack's dead now.
Beefy Jack is now dead.
Beefy Jack sounds like a Jack in the Box.
Beefy Jack does sound like a Jack in the Box, but no, I want Jack in the Box.
I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. I didn't eat breakfast again.
I didn't eat breakfast either. Like a fool.
We are
Fool
idiots.
that I am. I didn't eat breakfast again. Jimmy Dean Beefy Jack sandwiches.
I'm getting some lag.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been noticing
Weird.
it for a few minutes.
Ooh, I like this song.
Yeah, I like this song.
I like all the songs, but like, you know.
This one's so chill.
Yeah. Oh no! I just
Oh.
realized I've been gone.
You've been gone.
Since you've been gone.
I can breathe for the first time.
You gotta welcome me back into the phone call. Or you have to join me in the phone call once again. The phone. The call. The phone call.
The phoned call.
The phone call. I'm back.
She's back.
Yeah, I haven't had any breakfast because I woke up at day 30 and then I do stream, and I have no idea what's happening with that particular angle.
I don't know, but I'm gonna draw it.
Are you gonna edit the arms and legs for the beefy form?
Not now, because I want to get yours going.
Yeah. Like, we are not gonna play today.
Oh, no, I mean, you know. I figured if we did end up playing today, it would be like 5 seconds.
Yeah. Like one level.
Yeah.
We're mostly just making dudes for future content.
Yeah, we're making dudes because it's fun.
Yeah. Boop beep beep boop.
Content.
Content. Content. Content. Content. Well, mine's gonna take less time than yours did, because we can, like, reuse some of your assets.
Yeah. It'll take a little bit less time, but...
We won't have to do, like,
considering mine's taking nearly 2 hours.
Yeah, well, it's art. It wouldn't take 2 hours if you didn't put so much love and care into your artwork.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry.
You should be. You should be sorry. Anyway. I didn't actually have anything to follow that up with. We're making Crasher castles.
Crasher castles. Maybe we'll be able to use... Yeah.
Much bigger assets in the beefy form. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I'm not giving myself tits.
Yeah, that's because you don't want them. I do, on the other hand, so... Hopefully having a template to work from... No, Jack's not being professional. Jack's being dysphoric and non-binary.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you meant. Okay.
Making art they're proud of.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm never proud of my art.
Mood. Trying to kind of emulate that Newgrounds style of line art.
Yeah.
It's like weird. I don't quite know what that's for, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
That's like where the legs go.
Yeah.
Self-validation is hard when you hate yourself.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because I love my friends. And I love my family. And I love my 4 girlfriends.
I fucking hate you.
Yeah, me too. I also hate me.
How dare you have 4 girlfriends when I have none?
Get out there!
I'm trying. All of my classes are online.
Listen, Jack. The secret is LARP. I'm not even kidding.
The secret is LARP.
The secret is LARP!
Can't do LARP in college at the same time.
Yeah, you can. It's like one weekend.
What's it? I don't know. The LARP that you tried to introduce me to just seems so complicated.
All LARP is complicated. And then it isn't when you're actually in it.
There's like so much lore to learn.
Yeah, there is, and that's why I ignore it. I haven't learned any of that lore. I only know, like, the little bit of lore I need to, like, get into the game, and everything else I'm gonna learn in-game. I don't even know how my character sheet works, and you know what? I'm gonna go do it anyway.
Alright.
This thing fucking slaps!
It's so good.
It's got me hype!
Oh wait, I forgot. How did I miss this?
I don't know. Beefy.
This is why I don't do sprites.
Jack. My wife I'm not married to yet says that she'll run a LARP for you.
Sick. Maybe we should do that for my birthday next year.
Yeah.
Just force everyone to do a LARP.
Yep.
Good morning, Moxie!
Good morning, Moxie Moth. We're doing art. We're making Castle Crashers, because that game is still relevant somehow.
It's relevant in my heart.
It's been relevant in my heart forever. The game's so freaking good.
I was looking at, see, here's the thing. I was looking at multiplayer games to play because...
And it's like, oh, a $4 DLC that lets me make custom assets for Castle Crashers? Yes, please.
Is this an excuse to buy a thing I've been wanting to buy anyways? Oh, hi, cat. Alright, we're yeeting spoons today.
Neat. I mean, yeet.
Yeet. I forgot my collar.
You forgot your collar. Your collar just goes away when you're... You should make your collar really tiny. It should be like the same size. Even smaller.
Like this.
Yeah, like that. Perfect. Just make it like tiny. It's the same size, it doesn't grow. Hopefully that's where the head goes.
Hopefully. I don't know. I'm guessing. It's my theme song.
So, Tricky the Clown, you forgot one again.
What?
That one.
God damn it.
So Tricky the Clown is kind of a Newgrounds deep cut.
Is it?
Yeah. Tricky the Clown showed up, I believe it was originally from the Madness series.
Oh, I forgot my arms again. That looks pretty good. Pretty good. Good enough.
I still don't know what that last sprite is for. I guess we'll find out at some point.
Maybe. I'm gonna take...
Move it up a layer.
Yeah, just making sure it's there.
You're gonna have black boxes on your
No, I'm not.
thing, probably.
Alright. There's me!
Test it out, anyway. Okay, yeah, you're fine.
There's game audio, but I'm not hearing it. Intake. What'd that do? Oh, it gives you different weapons.
That shows your custom weapon versus your not custom weapon.
Yeah, it is above the hand. Whoa, there's two of me.
It lets you fight yourself.
That's pretty good.
It is above the hand, so you might have to, like, cut a piece out for the hand.
Yeah, but they didn't say that.
They sure didn't. So it looks like the bottom part of the...
Yeah, I may... Like, here, right?
Yeah. Gonna make like black bars and first, and you can see where the hand goes. Or you're just gonna erase it.
Just gonna try. 'Cause I can always undo.
And if it's a little bit in front, then that just kind of looks good, you know?
Need a little more.
No, that actually looks great.
I need a little more on the
Yeah, but that looks like almost perfect. Yeah, Sandwich Black should have a horrifyingly buff torso.
That's so funny. That's good.
That's perfect, actually.
Yeah, look, it's me. That's so silly. That's so.
You forgot your shield.
Silly. Oh, my shield. I need a shield.
You need a shield.
What do I do for? What do I do for my shield?
Palette.
Do a palette. Wait, I have an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about a pincushion tomato?
Oh, I love that.
Because my sword is
It's also been suggested a button or a cookie.
Ooh, a button would be good. I like a button, actually. I like that a lot.
One of your, like, yellow buttons. Or, I guess you don't have yellow buttons, you have, like, brown buttons.
I have gold buttons, so I could do gold button. Wait, am I doing this now? No.
I'm just jamming. Also, you're not on the right screen, Jack.
Ah, shit. Sorry.
Say nobody can see what you're doing because you're not on the right screen. Mushroom. I know it's a button. For a second there, it looked like a mushroom.
Yeah. All right. Now I crave mushrooms. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, I guess it's supposed to be the back of the shield.
Looks good. That actually does look quite good. Yeah. Just gonna make it look more like the back. Darken the thing. There. Now it's got like a curve to it. You're on the wrong screen again.
It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Everything's fine.
There we go. That's better.
Run around and see what the shield does when you like run and jump, because I have an idea for like what I want the shield to do, but it does do this. It does use the side angle in like combos and things. That makes sense. Anyway, I kind of had an idea to like have no shield, and then like when I put the shield up, it'd be like a. It was in fact a Mr. Weeble mushroom. So it's like I kind of thought that maybe like if when I put the shield up, it could be like a force field.
Ooh.
But I wouldn't have the shield normally. But then it would like appear and disappear during my combos, so that wouldn't
Yeah.
look great. But anyway, I guess that makes it my turn.
That makes it your turn.
Unique character slot 1. Ba bee boo ba boo bee boo ba boo
Hang on,
ba boo ba.
I just want to get rid of this.
Yeah. Delete.
No, how do I delete?
It's not in a slot.
Oh, I thought it was.
Nope, it's not in a slot.
Oh, okay. Cool.
It's disabled.
That works.
Ba,
Right, so now we create new.
ba, 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 ba.
Folder.
Painting dot pung.
And then. Ah!
Oops,
That's
you're on
fine.
the wrong screen anyway. Ha 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 ha. And then can you copy like just the like head and body layer?
Here, in case you want that, that's over there.
Yeah.
Now I can't. Now I can't spoil things.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna take this, and I'm gonna take this, and I'm going to copy and paste.
Yeah,
So now you have that.
great. Now swap places with me.
Okay, hang on.
And swap VTubers with me. That sounds like it's gonna be a big pain in the butt, so don't worry
No,
about doing it.
it's not.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, then do it. No, I'm Jack. No, there's 2 Jack.
No, there's 2 Jack. Oh no.
No, there's 2 Jack.
Or like the SpongeBob thing.
I don't like your tone. I think that you are. How's that? Yay! I'm back.
She's
and I'm
back.
Jack. And Jack's me.
I'm using her face. All right.
Yeah. No, don't use my face.
Swap chairs.
Okay. Okay. So, this is going to be the first ever penny art stream. Where's the pen? Oh, here it is.
Yeah, I keep it there
And
so I don't
then
lose
which button is control again?
it. This one.
Oh, none of your things have fucking labels on them. It's control. It's control.
My keyboard's
V
very
or
pretty.
Control Z.
Control Z is undo.
Control Z. I usually do art on the iPad, so I don't often. I don't often. You know. Thing. I'm just gonna be a little squinty.
That's fine. I'm really squinty when I draw too.
That's fine.
It messes with my face a lot.
Okay. Shit.
We return once more to the face stealing gag.
It's
Yeah,
not,
you gotta use the mouse for that.
Ugh. It's not working. How does this program work?
Okay, you have.
Oh, I have a zoom. Do I have a? Can I just drag with the? Nope, that's a color select.
You just zoom on the spot that you want to zoom on.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. No, it doesn't work.
It does.
I gotta
Yeah. There's
scroll.
these two. You can use those.
Gotta scroll. I don't use computers. Okay.
It's fine.
I'm old. Okay, what do I look like? That makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Can I like color dropper like a different?
Yeah, you can click on those. Those are my swatches that I have. And then you can also just use the big wheel.
How do I
How do I
fill?
If you double press G, that does that. Yeah. So, yeah. And then you're good. That's what you want.
There we go. That's closer to my skin color.
That's yellow, dude.
What? No, it's look at the
No, that's yellow. That's yellow.
Oh. It is yellow. It looks different on It looks different on the colors are different.
There you go.
I'm not jaundiced. The colors are different.
They are a little bit different.
They're so different.
Technically, my tablet is more accurate, but yeah. Yes, jaundiced.
I'm not jaundiced. Ah!
Control speak.
Help! Fuck.
You're on the wrong layer. You have to go to the body layer.
There's a body layer?
There's a body layer.
Why would you do this to me?
Honestly, I don't know.
Why would you do this to me, Jag? Alright, new layer? How do I...
Check what?
That's the jaundice thing, I think.
Penny has jaundice.
I don't have jaundice. Shut up. I'll kill you. I'm just bad at art, okay?
You're not bad
This is what
at
This is what I'm fucking talking about.
You're not bad
This is
at
what I'm
art.
fucking talking about, okay?
Oh, you can copy my face too if you want. If you go to the other.
I just don't know how anything works. I can draw my own face.
Okay.
Probably.
Well, if you want like the positioning of the eyes.
How do I... Is this a... Where's the pen?
Here. Press
Oh,
B.
right. How do I...
B for brush.
How do I make... Oh, B for brush. Okay.
And then these bracket keys will do size.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know your shortcuts. Or any shortcuts.
Yeah.
Okay, that's green.
That's green.
That's green.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just double checking the other monitor to make sure I got my
wait,
colors
what's green?
right. My eyes?
Oh, yeah, they're,
My eyes are green?
yeah, your eyes are green.
How do I lower the opacity of these?
You go to the little slider there.
Oh.
There you go.
And now I want to make a
New layer? It's the...
Is this
One more. There you go.
this one? Cool. And this is head 2.
Yeah, CSB does let you... This is why we label our layers, don't we, Jack?
That's the wrong color.
Yeah.
I just...
I don't know why it didn't. Oh, you're pressing the
I'm
buttons.
bumping the shit lower.
Yeah.
Ass. Did I do it again?
Yeah, you did.
Fuck.
I can
I
turn
hold a
that off
pencil
if you
super
want.
weirdly.
Yeah, your eyes are different colors now.
I want my eyes to be a different color anyway. Deeper.
If you use a different brush, what I did for mine is I just used I used a bigger brush, and I just did like one little stroke, and that might help.
Ah!
Alright,
How do I turn that off?
Yeah, let me disable that.
I hold a pencil super weirdly, so like...
Okay, that should be disabled now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
How do lefties hold their pencils? I don't know. I have a death grip on my pencils.
That's... okay.
You can click here and reference mine if you want.
Yours are like super high up.
Yeah, I used this line as the bottom of the
Oh, okay.
And then I kind of did my eye in between that and that line. And that'll help it keep consistent between the things.
Right. No, it's the wrong color.
Oh yeah, it might be too if you press lightly, it does light color.
That later.
Is one pencil grip I fear above others, and it's Blex. Yeah, they hold a pencil like a freak. I've never seen anyone hold a pencil like that before.
No, it's not. That is not consistent. We could just get rid of that there.
I think my face is on my eyes are on a different layer. If you wanted to copy and paste and then change the color.
Yeah, I do want to copy and paste your eyeballs.
So if we go over here, you gotta find the layer with my eyes.
How am I supposed to do that?
Let's see. It's this one. It does have other things on it.
That's fine, I can erase those.
Yeah, so just... Nope. There you go.
Oh, it's just exactly in the same place.
Yeah. And then you just have to, you press E to erase.
Well, now I don't need this opacity to be down.
Yeah.
Because now it's all in the right place.
Yep. Wrong layer.
Thank you.
It's a nightmare. Like, my hand is some sickening creature clambering up the side of a telephone pole.
How do I alpha lock?
With the...
Transparent.
Let me still the mouse for a second. Just so I can make sure. Or...
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
I'm just gonna... Here.
Yeah, it is like how you're supposed to, use a violin bow.
Look, I told you guys. I told you once, I told you 100,000 times. I'm bad at arts.
You're not, though. Apparently I used my skin tone instead of erasing, like an asshole. Not how you're supposed to do things.
Oh, wait.
What?
No, I just did that also. I keep forgetting it's on a different layer, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense. Oh. How do I?
Yeah.
Control X? No.
No.
That's cut.
Control Shift Z.
Control Shift C. Okay, that makes sense.
Because Control Y is stupid. Seriously, any program that uses Control Y as redo, I hate you.
E for erase.
Yep.
Okay, I did erase that. You guys can see my completely chaotic, I don't know how to do arts.
Talk nice to yourself.
Listen, I just don't know how to use this program, okay?
Yeah.
I've never used this program before.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm using it for the first time in a public setting, and that's embarrassing to me.
It's not.
It is.
You're learning. Learning's good.
Learning is dumb.
Do you find yourself asking why, chat? Yeah, exactly. Control Y. Like, I think Live 2D defaults to Control Y, and I hate it.
I'm gonna need to change some of your expressions.
Why don't you match the Dan Paladin derpy face? Because I started by tryharding and now Penny feels like she has to try hard too.
Yeah, I do have to try harder. It's not gonna match.
Well, but it's not gonna match, like Nathan's isn't gonna match.
Shut up.
Okay. This is gonna be fun because you can do...
It's not gonna match anyway because it's gonna be more in my
Yeah, it's gonna be more
style
your style.
You know, for some function of my style, whatever that means. Can I just like color? How do I do that?
So alpha lock the layer. And then you should be able to color the eyes in without messing.
Mm-hmm.
Why is my hotkey for absolutely nothing?
No,
it's so
I'm still erased.
Oh, hotkey. Hockey. Why is my hotkey?
B for brush. I'll do details.
I did, I redid Penny's, the VTuber's eyes, to match my new style better. And they're so pretty. I put like a little bit of purple and a little bit of green in them. They're so pretty. I can't wait for you guys to see. Yeet that key like a hockey puck.
Okay, how do I do gradients?
You basically take whatever color you want to gradient with.
Oh, I missed one. The light.
Yeah, and then you're just gonna, with a very light touch, just yeah. Oh yeah, and you can use that brush too. That brush is on multiply, so hang on.
Eh.
If you go here to blending mode,
yeah,
and then make it normal, that'll do what you want it to do.
Like that.
Yeah.
But like more.
Yeah, you'll get a feel for like how strong you need.
But
to
like
use
less.
Yeah. It might be easier if you use the other brush. So press B again. And just like, yeah, with a light touch, you can kind of, yeah, swirl it on there. What are you guys talking about in there?
Maybe I need a darker purple.
That's chat's spouting nonsense.
That's always spouting nonsense. Okay, that's not terrible.
Yeah. If you want specifically the purple that I use, it's that last swatch color.
Oh.
I'm trying to like give advice, but not like tell you what to do.
Yeah, no, you're helpful.
Because I have a control problem. For real, for real.
Light and a little harder. Yeah, perfect. That's what I want.
Cute.
Right click for
Your alpha one.
Right.
There you go.
Accidentally control.
Oh yeah, I think control moves stuff.
Just want to add a little more eyeball to the eyeball.
Just want a little more eyeball.
You need some eyeball in your eyeball.
So you can eyeball while you eyeball.
Oops.
You're giving yourself dark circles there.
That's alpha. That'd be appropriate.
Accurate.
I might actually do that.
That'd be funny. You're just so sick of this bullshit. princess is getting kidnapped. You take an allergy med?
Yes.
Oh, dang. The allergies. They're winning.
The allergies. Race rate?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Love that. I can gradient it. I'm starting to pick this up.
Yeah, you got it.
Oops. Still in race mode. And I got an alpha lock again.
I want you guys to know that even though you can't see me, I do still got the movement.
It's true. They got the movement.
I have noticed that actually being a YouTuber has changed my mannerisms very slightly.
It's true.
I move my mouth a lot more when I talk. Because you have to.
I never realized there was banjo in this song.
Yeah.
Because you never hear it long enough.
No. I think this might be the, like, extended version.
This will look even better once I get the eye shine in it.
Yeah.
Ah, hell.
Yep.
It's so easy to do.
It's so easy to do. You all laughed at me, but look, it's not just me.
I'm still laughing at you.
Oh. Well.
I've got 3 layered eyes.
You do. They're cool. They're very, Disney villain color scheme.
Yes.
I like it. I miss Al.
I miss Al too. Have you ever been down to the water pipes way? Down to the bottom of the water system?
Alligator. Is his name actually Al, or did we call him Al?
We just called him Al.
Okay. There's an alligator in this game, and we called him Al.
Al E. Gator.
You can call me Al. And we love him so much.
We do love him. Actually, that's better.
That was me. Was that you who named him Al?
Yeah.
The reason? Because he's an alligator.
The reason for the season.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay, how do I do the outlines? Oh, I should do the hair first.
Yeah, I did the outlines last, but also I put them underneath the head layer. Because he looked exactly like a Thai Beanie Baby alligator I got from Goodwill when I was like 7. Oh. Your hair color is this one, by the way.
This one?
Yeah, that's the one I used for you. The bang.
Yep. This is just how I draw hair.
That's fair.
I'm not alpha locked.
Oh no, that layer is clipped.
Oh. Ah!
Yeah, that's why it was clipped. So what I would do is I would just undo and I would make a new layer for your hair. clip it to the head. That's fun. And then just make a new hair layer. Come on.
New raster layer.
Yeah. It's okay, we got the reference. That's all that matters.
Why is it all janky down here?
Because you're pressing lightly. This brush has a thing on it, so if you press lightly, it presses lightly.
Yeah. I don't know what my hair looks like.
You have a reference right here. And it's such simple shapes. You found a hole in my NDI.
You're right, I do have a reference with shapes.
Literally your face. You may want to do 2 hair layers. You may want to do a front hair and a back hair.
Your back hair. Well, this is going to be back hair layer.
So put it underneath the head layer. There you go. That'll be easier so you don't have to like worry about where you're putting your lines as much.
Jack.
What?
How do I draw hair? I need help.
Okay. Let me show you. So, first of all, I think it's nice to have a bigger brush because we're doing cartoony.
Yeah.
I do...
This is the back layer.
This is the back layer.
We need a new layer for the front layer.
So, I do these little things.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they look good. Draw an M, and then you just do a little like swoop, and then swoop. Here too, you can just do
the swoops.
Swoop. See?
Not really, but thank you.
A little M at the top. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'm at the top too.
Yeah. Drawing hair is the bane of my existence because mine is curly as hell. Yeah, Penny's is curly too. I've simplified it a lot. A good tip I've been told for drawing straight hair though is to see it as a bunch of bananas. No, that works here too. If you get too frustrated, I can also
I just need you to do it. Okay. I can't draw hair. I can't draw my hair because my hair is curly and complicated.
Your hair is adorable, and I've done a great job simplifying it.
You have.
I'm taking Penny's face. Wow. Why is your face so squinty?
I don't know. Camera angle, maybe?
No, I just adjusted that.
Oh. All Greek to me. I say with Jack's face.
There we go. That's better. Alright.
That apply to both eyes, or?
Yeah. I did it on both eyes. So.
I tried. I
No,
really
you did. You did really good.
If I had like a million years to like practice this and I was using my own like the art program I'm familiar with, I'd be doing better. But trying to learn a new art program on stream while also trying to like get something practical done.
It is not the ideal conditions to be making stuff in. Greek, you say?
I can add detailing later with the outline layer.
Yep.
Then I just need the back hair to give me that nice little curly swoosh at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Lengthen it a bit, you know? But not too much because it's cartoony.
I'm gonna do what I do on your hair.
Yeah, yeah, gradient, yeah.
I'm used to my shortcut buttons. Then you can just copy and paste those on the other ones.
Yeah.
That's what I did for mine.
Alright.
Just kind of shift it a little
Question,
bit.
where's the selector tool?
That would be this one, the little lasso there.
Okay, do you have a shortcut for it?
No. So, it's on rectangle, you can use lasso if you want, that might be easier. But rectangle's fine.
Rectangle's fine.
Just Control C and Control V, and then you'll just shift it over. Control T. So, yeah, put it back over that. And then Control T for transform, and you can hold shift and it'll move it in a straight line. Yeah. The letter Sigma. Oh, fuck. I hate that.
Oh, there's two layers.
Yeah, there's two layers.
There's two hair layers.
We'll finish this off stream.
Yep.
Because we will be running out of time soon. But it's fine. We'll go until Black is live. As usual. Snatched her wig.
Oh, so I did. I did Control C and then Control V though.
I don't think it listened to you. So cancel there. I see. You were still in transform mode. So yeah, Control T and then shift it over. It's lagging. Maybe it's lagging because we're also running the game.
Probably. It's over a little bit more because.
Yep. And then press enter. Or hit OK there.
Ah. What did I do?
Control Z. Did somebody say waffles?
Can I? Is there a way to move both these layers at the same time?
Control D. Oh, both of the front and the back?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, Baines.
You can by copying and pasting both layers and then selecting both of them. And it's a lot more complicated. Just do it this way. You don't have to select it if it's the only thing on the layer, by the way. Just Control C and Control V. T.
Oh, it just makes a new layer every time.
Yeah, it does. This is why... Oops, you moved the midpoint. That's fine. Just, yeah. I do that all the time. Yep, there you go. She's doing so good, guys! I'm so proud of her. The front and side ones we're probably gonna wanna
redraw.
Redraw, yeah. Yeah, those ones we're gonna wanna redraw.
Okay, well for these ones I can do layer, so that was the back hair layer. I did exactly what you said to do and it didn't do it. Oh, because I'm using shift instead of control. That would explain it.
Now you use shift to move it in a straight line.
Just clean it up manually.
Yeah, we'll clean it up. It's fine. This is what I do every
I'm
day.
gonna cancel that and I'm gonna move it over again. Because I didn't do it.
Remember, any little spots that are missing, we'll just fix that.
Yeah, fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post. It's fine. This, you know, when I started using this program, I had all of these blunders. Like, these are just the things that you have to learn, especially coming from only using Procreate.
Yep, that's where I'm coming from here.
Yeah. This is hard. When you don't have the, when you don't have, like, the background for it. I started on computer programs like this and like Photoshop, so I had a little bit of a better like base to work with when I first started. What's up?
Layer is this? If that's here. B for brush. Oh, D.
That's
deselect.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then
B again. Am I not alpha locked? It's just the wrong
you
layer?
are alpha locked.
I am alpha locked? Yeah. There we go. Cleans up nice.
That one's also alpha
Bitch.
locked.
B for bitch.
Clip Studio tries to be so helpful, and sometimes it's just not. If you want to merge those layers together, you can go to the top one.
I do want to merge these layers.
And then Control E. I don't know why it's E. but that merges them.
Perfect. Unlock that. Clean that up real good. Wait.
Remember, that's a lighter color because of the gradient, and also you don't have to clean that.
I want to.
Okay.
There we go. Don't judge me. I'm dumb.
I'm not judging.
All right, I'm gonna get a little darker color for the mouth.
Yeah. So I would just copy the color that you have.
I did.
And
copy.
yeah, and then just shift it down here.
Oh, okay. Just manually just
manually do it. Oh, you're on the back hair layer. Layers are hard, you guys. Seriously hard.
Wait, I got a better idea.
Huh. Just the extreme ooh-woo. It's cute. I like that.
Just a little ooh-woo.
Just a little ooh-woo.
I always put a little bit of ooh-woo in it.
Mm-hmm. Put a little ooh-woo in it.
So ear.
Yeah, ears.
Same thing. I should have put that on a different layer instead of just the head layer.
You can do it now.
Face down. Control E.
Control E. Oops.
Oh no! I merged too far.
One less. There we go. See, you do video games. You can get these shortcuts, no problem.
I'm just so happy with how I did that mouth. Oh well.
It's really cute. It's okay, you can do it again. You've done it once, you can do it again. You'll want to Control Z for the ears too. You'll probably want to copy and paste those.
Yep.
Because it's easier. Draw it once and copy it forever. And that's kind of how Live 2D works.
What is this layer even for?
Those are your eyes.
Oh, that's my eyes. Okay. Then I should put the ooh mouth and the ears here.
Yeah,
Also,
like one below that probably I would.
Yeah, make a new layer for that. Put that below there. Whoops.
Oh wait, no, you can't do that. Yeah, just above.
Above is fine.
Above is fine.
Above is fine. We're gonna ooh woo.
Yeah. We're gonna ooh woo. So cute. Such a good job. Maybe I should offer model commissions, honestly. Oh,
actually, I love that.
So cute.
I love this. This is perfect.
Yes.
I got a big old schnoz. I'm not gonna put the nose on.
That's you look like a fantasy
But you know what?
character.
You know what I am gonna put on is
Oh, you can glance this. Little smile is so cute.
we're just gonna put all these accessories on the same layer,
Oh, that's a good idea, yeah.
and we're just gonna copy and paste them over.
Look at her being a smart little artist.
Smartest.
Smartest. You are the smartest.
And we're just gonna lasso tool,
You don't need to if it's all...
square tool. Shut up. Shut up.
Okay.
Shut up. I love you.
Oh, your antenna.
Oh, yes!
You might want to put those on the same layer.
Wait.
Cancel.
Whoop. Almost forgot my antenna.
And you may want to half brim your glasses so that it's easier to see your eyes.
Oh, yeah. I could just erase that.
Yeah. That's what I do on your model. It's just like that.
Oh no, I'm still in erase mode.
See?
Yeah.
The little chow smile is killing me.
Oh no! That's still erasing!
B. Ooh. Brush. Yeah. Oh, cute! So cute.
Got a bit off the base there.
Yeah, but you're doing it on the head layer, so you're not gonna be able to copy it.
No.
Okay. You can be a little
I
different.
just need it to be off the... I'll just...
You can just do it on all of the sprites, it's fine.
I'm just gonna do the little nose bit.
Yeah, that'll be easier to copy.
Yep. I'm not gonna copy it, I'm just gonna redraw it. Because it takes 3 strokes.
Yes, that's what I mean.
I want you guys to know that it's a lot cuter on my colors. Here.
On, what do you mean on your color?
On this monitor's colors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, color may vary on,
Color may vary. Your mileage may vary.
My tablet has really good color.
It's true.
And it is unfortunate
now
that
we're
not everyone
gonna-
sees the world this way.
Now we're gonna zoom out. Copy.
You should do your antenna first.
Oh, right. Antenna. I keep forgetting that.
You should
that's
do
a
them in
thing.
the purple like this one.
Yeah.
Because it matches better, and I should have done it that way in the first place.
Oh, but I need the yellow first.
I do the yellow on top because that way. I mean, you can add a little
do you?
guide. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna like guide.
Guide and then sort of draw. You kind of draw like a cartoon feather shape.
Yeah, I know how antenna
Yeah.
work.
On
That's the one thing I do know how it works.
on the model, I'm fixing the way that I did the antenna because they don't look free on this model. It's like the one thing I don't love. Cute.
Meanwhile, we've got this like epic fucking
Yeah.
orchestral.
Epic music, chow, smile, face. Yeah. Is a bug.
Why won't you press harder?
Sometimes it's stubborn.
Oh, that's perfect actually.
Which
That's
is why
perfect
my
shape.
hands hurt all the time. That's so good.
I'm actually gonna make this one a little bit thinner.
Yeah. So cute. This is gonna be so cool. To like be able to play as us.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the most extreme form of the character customizer problem. It's good.
Okay, I love that actually.
Yeah, looks great.
I can adjust that for I can adjust that for the different angles.
Yeah.
Copy, paste, transform,
There you go.
shift.
She's learning. Simple, like in my ear. It's so annoying.
Wow, I hate when that happens. Copy, paste, transform.
look like little bunny ears, and I'm so here for it.
Yeah. But they're not. They're moth antenna.
Yeah. They got the little stem and stuff.
Yeah.
But like the silhouette of it looks like bunny ears.
What color did I use for the blush again? Was it like this one?
It's probably that one. That's the one I use for blush.
Well, we're gonna find out. I'm gonna put it back on the head layer.
Your little blushies. Little blushies, they're so cute.
Yeah, Ko-Fi Bot. Ko-Fi Bot tells you to give me money. I can't tell if that's annoying or not. Ko-Fi Bot. I don't like that it pops in on the actual stream. I think that's a little annoying. So cute.
Just gonna merge all these down.
Just ignore it for the most part. Oh, good.
That seems fine.
Yeah, we'll do the sides off stream when I can more easily just help. That's so cute though.
Let's see how it looks in game.
Yeah,
we haven't checked it in game in a while.
Gonna
save.
Oh, and it just does for some reason.
As opposed to yelling at you every single time. Oh no, I'm naked.
You're naked.
Oh, that looks pretty good actually.
Here, if you do this one.
Yeah.
There you go.
What do y'all think? Looks pretty good actually.
Cute.
It's hard to see my glasses because they're pink, but
we can change them to gold, which is gonna be the new color.
My current glasses are like this.
They're like coppery,
purpley kind of deal.
Yeah, they're cool. But the gold fits your new character design.
It does fit my new character design.
She's so cute, you guys.
Yeah,
look at
I'm
her.
adorable.
Where's Black? They're supposed to be live.
They're supposed to be live now. Before we shift over.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back to Clip Studio here.
Here it's annoying. Because
Alt tab.
Alt is where Windows should be, and my keyboard program won't let me fix it. So when I switch computers, I forget where the key is.
So we're just gonna before we go. I forgot to make that. We're gonna just do the weapon real quick.
Yeah, do it. I don't see the notification that Black is live, so we're fine.
Yeah. How do I do straight lines?
You can hold shift.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm gonna do the
before you hold shift,
color.
make a little dot somewhere, and then so you literally just have to tap where you want the dot to start. There you go. Because otherwise it'll try to do it from somewhere stupid. What's your weapon gonna be?
What do you think my weapon's gonna be? You've known me for how long? You don't know what my weapon's gonna be?
Keyblade?
No.
Oh, that was a good guess.
It was a good guess. Too wide.
It's a stick! It's a lead pipe. Clang!
You're right on the clang part.
Oh, it's a hammer! It's Big Hammer! Big Hammer time! Yeah! That's
I'm just getting the basic shape of the big
yeah.
hammer down before I... That is not centered.
It's fine. Stop. Hammer time. Someone tell me when Black's live. I got a thing about people being late. Even especially when it's me. I gotta think about me being late, really. If you want do you want the symmetry tool?
Yes, I do want the symmetry tool.
So.
How do I symmetry? Black appears to be live for now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Black appears to be live for me.
Okay, well, then we're gonna do this off camera and you guys will see the hammer next time.
You'll see the hammer next time.
It'll be a surprise.
It'll be a surprise hammer.
You better join us next Wednesday.
Yeah, join us next Wednesday when we actually fucking play the game.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Alright,
But for now, I've got some arting to do, so let's all go raid Blackfoot and not look at me while I art.
Don't look at my art!
Don't look at me while I art.
Who's the guy, from Bean Puppy Cat who's like that? I don't know. Remember. I don't remember.
I haven't seen it.
Anyways, we'll see you over there. Make sure you click into the raid.
Goodbye,
We'll see you
y'all.
next time. Bye-bye! See you tomorrow!
Okay, now we can have the game up on that screen.
Yeah, now we can have the game up here.